Welcome back to my kitchen. Everybody's always asking me to do chiles rellenos. Everybody just loves chiles rellenos. I love chiles rellenos. But this is the next page in our taco manual, and doing all big chiles rellenos doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for a taco. So I'm going to take you to the city of Veracruz on the Gulf side of Mexico and into the Hidalgo market, where everyone makes jalapeños rellenos and serves them in tacos. So we are doing chiles rellenos today for tacos, and we're starting with all of these beautiful jalapeños. Now, jalapeños have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger as time has marched on. And I will say it's sometimes hard to find ones that are the right size for doing this kind of taco. So you're going to want ones that are about 2 ounces a piece. That's kind of what I've got here. And I'm going to show you the classic way to work with them, the way you would do it in Mexico, which is to blanch them first in sugar water. So I've got water boiling over here, and I'm using piloncillo here, the unrefined sugar that they use so much in Mexico. You could just use a couple of tablespoons of brown sugar, but I'm going to just roughly chop this. There's a faster way to do this, I'll tell you that, and that is to put it in the microwave for about 10 or 15 seconds to kind of unstabilize it. The reason it's a hard cone is because there's a lot of moisture still left in piloncillo. Water here, I'm going to put in what would be the equivalent of 1 teaspoon of table salt. I'm working with diamond crystal salt, so that's 2 teaspoons of that. And then all of this piloncillo or brown sugar will go in there. And then I'll show you how you set these little jalapeños up for perfect stuffing. About 1/2 inch down from the top, you're going to cut a slit across the width of it, and then you're going to make a T out of that, going down to about 1/2 inch from the bottom. So each one of these will get cut like that, and then we're going to put them all into our salted sweet water. Now I'm going to plop all of these guys down into this simmering water now and kind of stir them around for about 5 minutes. This is going to blanch them and allow us to be able to go in with a small spoon and scrape out all of the seeds and veins. I will say that something like a spider, this kind of thing, is really useful here to keep them pressed down. 5 minutes have transpired now. Maybe you were wondering why that sugar was in there, but people in Mexico say it really tames the heat of the jalapeños, so they like to put a little bit of sweet there in the water. And you'll also find people that will tell you to do a brief blanch and then change the water and put more sugar in and back and forth and stuff like that. I think one blanching in sugar water is a really good thing. Now our next thing that we're going to do after these cool off just a little bit, and I'm going to turn them all upside down here so that all of the water goes out of them. But we're going to let these cool off for a little bit, and then I'm going to go in with a little tiny, like a demi-tasse kind of spoon, and scrape out the seeds and the veins. Now, while the chilies are cooling off there, we're going to make a very, very simple guacamole to go with the chiles rellenos. I like to smear this over the bottom of the tortilla and then set the stuffed chili on top of that. That's what they do a lot of times in that market that I was telling you about in the city of Veracruz. I'm working with really small avocados today, but if you were going to be choosing large ones, it will probably take 2. I'm going to actually do it with 3 of these really small ones here. After you cut around the pit, of course, you have to get the pit out, and because these are Hass avocados, you can go right up to the skin without it breaking. You can get all of the flesh off of the skin. Okay, scooping all of this out, we're going to season it with a little bit of onion. For this simple kind of guacamole, I like to use green onion or knob onion. I have a knob onion to show you here. So this is a knob onion, meaning it forms a knob on this end, and you have to treat the knob slightly differently than you would the rest of this. I'm going to cut this part of it up into very thin slices to mix in. I won't need the whole thing here, but let's just say about that much of it can go into this. And the bulb part of it, I'm going to cut the root end of it off because that would be really hard. And then cut it in half. And then it's like chopping up a very tiny onion here, but I'm going to cut it crosswise. And like that. These are the kind of onions that you see in all of the taquerias in Mexico that get cooked on a griddle or on a grill. And they get cooked slowly so that this knob at the end gets really sweet. And they are the onion of the taquerias. Okay, I think we got that all done. So we'll put that into our avocado base here. I'm going to season it with some salt here. I'm using the really big flaky diamond crystal, and so I'm going to put about a teaspoon and a half of that in there. If you're using table salt, that would be about 3/4 of a teaspoon. And then I'm going to season it with some lime juice here. Now, most people in the United States add so much lime juice to their guacamole that it starts to really step on the flavor of the good avocados. So I would suggest that you follow the Mexican way of doing it, which is to add just enough lime that it perks up the flavor of the avocado rather than overwhelming it. Okay, so about a tablespoon or so of that will go in there. But really, we'll have to taste all of this. Now, I'm going to mash it with an old-fashioned potato masher because that's my favorite utensil. You could use like a big meat fork for this, or you could use the back of a spoon, though I find that kind of unwieldy. But the old-fashioned potato masher will give you a beautiful texture in the guacamole. And so that's why I like that. Okay. Now, we need some cilantro in this too. Let me first just taste it to see if we got the right amount of lime and the right amount of salt in here. Tastes really good to me. But we do need to put some cilantro in it. And we're also going to do that in the use some of it for the filling that we are going to put in these chiles rellenos. So I have my cilantro here washed and dried. Dried is really important if you're going to use this technique. Fold the top part of it under, and then with a sharp knife cut crosswise, holding everything really tight. I'm right-handed, so I'm holding everything tight with my left hand, and I am just slicing very, very finely what in culinary school they will tell you is a chiffonade. And I'm looking for a little over a half a cup of this. And I'm just doing it with the stems and all because the stems are very tender and very flavorful. So let's see. I think we're just about to the right amount here. That looks good. Next step is to take a little bit of this and mix it into this mixture here. I think I'll use that spoon. And we have our simple guacamole to go on these tacos ready and at the ready here. Okay, so we'll set that to the side. Now I've got some shredded cheese here. In Mexico, they would use something they would call manchego, which is very much not the manchego of Spain. It's just a simple, it's like a brick cheese, that kind of thing. You could use Monterey Jack for this. You just want something that is light and is not going to overwhelm everything else. Mild cheddar is also a good choice. So brick, mild cheddar, Monterey Jack. You can go to the grocery store, the Mexican grocery store, and get the one that's called Chihuahua cheese, which is also one that could oftentimes be used in Mexico. And I'll put the rest of the cilantro into this shredded cheese here. And then I'm just going to work it in with my hands. Okay, now I will meet you back here in just a minute when those chilies are cool enough to handle. Okay, the technique for cleaning out the chilies is to use a small spoon like this and then go in and cut. Actually, I'm just scraping out all of the veins. That's where all of the heat is. Not in the seeds. I know you've been told that your whole life, but it's really in the veins, so you want to get that out. And then when it comes to the bottom, I just kind of pull it out and go back in and get the rest of the seeds out. Okay, so that's that. So you've got a clean chili like that. And then I'm going to take about one portion of this, which would be about an ounce of cheese, and form it into a little football shape here. I think it's gonna not need that part. And then put that into the chili and stuff it like that. And then reform the chili into its original shape like that. And then after we get them all done, I'm going to slide them into the freezer, because freezing the exterior will make the next step, which is the making of the batter and frying them. It will make it so much easier. So that's what I recommend that you do. Stuffed and ready to go. I'm going to slide these guys into the freezer, and after about 45 minutes or so, they will firm up a lot and be easy to work with. I will meet you back here when these are firm and we've got all the oil and stuff set up for the batter and the frying. Well, we're coming down the home stretch here. You can see that these chilies, when you pick them up, they're very firm. They're a little soft in a couple of places, but they're firm, and it'll allow us to dip them into the batter and without the cheese falling out or anything like that. Now, that batter is the classic batter for these chiles rellenos, any chiles rellenos really in Mexico, is what I call a souffle batter. That means that we're going to beat the egg whites separate and then fold the yolks into that. And you can tip back and forth from shells like most people are taught to do this. Or your palm is actually very, very soft. And so you can crack the egg and then break it into the palm and let the white part just flow down between your fingers there. So I'm almost done with the 5 here. And then I am going to put it on and beat the whites until they hold stiff peaks, putting a little bit of salt in there. These are super fresh eggs, and the whites don't want to come away from the yolks very much just because they're super, super fresh. Okay, one more here. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, now with, just let me wipe off my hand here, put the whites over here, and put it on a kind of medium speed just to get it started there. I'm gonna put about a half a teaspoon of salt into this. And when these are really fluffy, almost holding stiff peaks, I'm going to start putting the yolks in there, folding the yolks in there, or doing it at a slow speed with a little bit of flour to stabilize it. I'll show you what that's going to feel like. Okay, let's take a look at these whites. I'm not sure that they're quite where we want them to be, but if you've ever worked with beaten egg whites, you'll know that this is not a stiff peak by any means. It's what would be called a very soft peak. So I'm going to put them back on for a minute longer to get to that almost stiff peak so that when you pull the whisk up, that it will leave a peak behind. Let's take a look at these beaten egg whites now. Well, I guess I better turn it fully off there. And when I pull this mixer, this whisk up here, you'll see that it will hold a peak. I am going to add to it a couple of tablespoons of flour and just put this on a slow speed. This will really stabilize the egg whites. Some people in Mexico don't do that, but now I'm going to add these egg yolks one at a time. And this is what is classically called a souffle batter because you've beaten the egg whites and then folded the yolks into it. Okay, so we've got everything done here. I'm going to give it just a little bit more mixing to make sure that everything is very nicely incorporated. And we've got these chilies. I've got a little bit more flour over here that I'm going to dredge the chilies in. That helps the souffle batter to stick. So what I usually do is that, and then just knock off excess, go right into the batter and make sure that you're covering it with on all sides with it. And then pull the chili straight up out of the batter. That's got a clump on one side. And then that'll go straight into the hot oil here. There we go. I'm going to check my temperature and see where we are temperature-wise here. I think that we're at about 360 degrees right now, and that's exactly where we want to be. And I am going to continue to batter and fry these guys until I have the whole surface covered, and then we'll do another batch. Okay, after a couple of minutes, when you're seeing that they're getting golden underneath, that's when I start to baste them with some oil. That will help to set that top batter there so that you can then turn them over. And you know, honestly, sometimes they'll roll and they won't want to stay over. But if you just keep basting them with this hot oil, you will cook them from the top like this. And you don't even have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about the fact that they're rolling over and not wanting to brown on the top, what is now the top side. So I just baste them a lot. Well, look at these beauties. I will tell you that making chile rellenos is a labor of love, but it's one that everybody appreciates. So you might want to tackle these. Now, let me tell you a few little details about all of this. Hardly anybody wants to be doing all this frying when their guests are there. And still everyone will tell you as soon as chiles rellenos come out of the oil, they should be eaten. But you don't have to do that. You could make these up several hours before your guests arrive, then put them onto a baking sheet that is covered with a silicone mat or some parchment paper. Put them into a hot oven, usually around 400 degrees, works really well, and let them crisp up on the outside. I will tell you, some people like the texture better. At that point, these are kind of soft, but they get crispier if you do that reheating method. Now, let's go back to that Hidalgo market in the city of Veracruz and take a tortilla. This is kind of crazy because these are so big. And these are the tortillas the size that you would find in a taqueria, right? And you take a little bit of our guacamole and put that down at the bottom here. And then you lay one of these monster chiles rellenos over that. I love to sprinkle it with a little bit of añejo cheese because that's a sort of a stronger cheese, or if you don't have that, you could use Parmesan or any kind of sharp garnishing cheese that you have there. But now's the moment that you just get to enjoy the fruits of your labors.